everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mics, proudly sponsored by Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. And check out our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. And check out our Altar Sleeves. Support the show by using the code MAGICMICS at checkout for 5% off anything in the store. I'm Evan Irwin. We get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, MTG Nerd Girl.
Hey, guys.
Ruben Bressler.
What's up? Good evening.
It's a few scant days before Christmas. Everybody got their shopping done?
It is
Most
still
of it.
March 2020 in my head.
Yeah.
So I have some of it done. I am returning home to the motherland once again, Columbus, Ohio, very soon, and I'll do some more shopping there.
Nice.
Well, good luck. I'm still hunting down stuff because my plans got changed at the last minute, and up is down, left is right. So
I found a really cool kitchen gadget that my mom doesn't own yet.
Ooh.
That I got for her for Christmas. So I'm excited for that.
Very nice. Well, we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most eloquent, letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10, what was the top 10 Phyrexian cards? Because I didn't update the doc. That's right. That's what happened there. So what was their top Phyrexian card, Ruben?
Well, 2 weeks ago, Phyrexian Juggernaut won the best comment. Last week, Ilgrevin wins for the best comment. And it's not just because of the username, shout out to Commander Grevin Ilvek, but also because it's a really excellent comment. Although he was talked a lot about last week, which also was, we talked a little bit about, and he isn't technically a Phyrexian, at least at the point in the timeline depicted on the card. We quite literally would not have the Phyrexians without the very first and now second longest single villain in Magic history behind Nicol Bolas, Yawgmoth Thran Physician. So props to the OG, the Mac Daddy, the original father of machines.
Wow, yeah.
Nice.
So it's not really a card, you're saying?
No, Yawgmoth Thran Physician.
Oh, we didn't have that on any of our lists?
Not last week.
We didn't have Yawgmoth?
We had it as the best black card on Arena, but not on our top 10 Phyrexians.
Holy cow. I guess that's
I don't know if
incredible.
I knew Yawgmoth was a Phyrexian. I'm sure I must have seen it on the list, but...
Well, no.
He's not a Phyrexian himself. He created the Phyrexians, and you can see the Phyrexian symbol on his belt.
Right, he is technically a human cleric. All the way from Modern Horizons 1, Yawgmoth Thran Physician's 2 black, 2 generic mana for a 2/4 mythic legendary human cleric with protection from humans. You pay 1 life and sack another creature, put a -1/-1 counter up to 1 target creature and draw a card. You can pay 2 black and discard a card to proliferate, meaning choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. This card is on Arena, and it is stupid and powerful as hell, and it's a card that runs historic because that's what 4-drops that do these things do.
You can forgive us for not having this on our Phyrexians list, I think, because it's not a Phyrexian creature type, doesn't have Phyrexian in the name. We talked about it the previous week. There's a lot of cool Phyrexians to talk about, but honorable mention to the creator.
Fair enough.
I like that. Would it have been okay to put it on the list? Like I put Phyrexian Tower as a black card, and I got some comments going, it's colorless.
No,
I
fine.
know.
No, Phyrexian Tower is more of a black card than Yawgmoth is a Phyrexian.
Great.
There you go. Well, congratulations to Ilgrevin. Please contact us on social media for your prize. On Reddit, we got Facebook. You can contact us on Discord if you're a patron, all that good stuff. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com.
Check the Reddit. I forget to do that.
Check that Reddit. Thanks again to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway. And stay tuned for our top 10 list this week, and maybe you can win next week's free gift certificate, because it is time to talk about our top 10 Return to Ravnica cards. I remember this set quite well. And it was a ton of fun at the time, and it's crazy in some ways looking back to think of how impactful this set really ended up being in Magic, which was a lot.
Yeah.
It was. I didn't know either. I started scrolling through. I was like, oh, whoa, this is, oh my gosh. And there was quite a few options for me to put on my list as well. Some real bangers here.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with our number 10. Ruben, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is my first card on the list, and it's also near and dear to my heart because it's the first card I ever previewed as a part of the In Contention podcast with Matt Kranstuber and Sam Stoddard, and it's Slitherhead. Slitherhead is a green-black hybrid mana with creature type plant zombie with it's a 1/1 with Scavenge 0. If you pay 0 mana and exile this card from your graveyard, you put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to this card's power onto target creature. Scavenge only as a sorcery. This may have actually been our preview card after Sam had gotten hired by Wizards, and then Joey Pasco came onto the show.
That sounds about right.
I think so. I think that's what it was.
Right.
And we got a preview card, and we were so happy how cute it is. Look at this, and we didn't know how powerful it would be. It had an effect for 0 mana from the graveyard, which is always, maybe this goes in dredge, maybe this thing's turns out it isn't great. But it's cute and it's near and dear to my heart.
It's adorable.
This was a card, I'm trying to look it up just to make sure, but I was using this in a modern deck for a minute as kind of an interesting way to get, just double checking, a cheap creature that synergized with a lot of my other stuff, and it was a great way to get Vengevine back out.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. This had the whole mechanic of scavenge, which was kind of interesting, and the scavenge costs were kind of fearful, I think is a way to put it, to not being broken. So that means they were kind of bad. So they padded them a little bit. I'm okay with that because that's the type of mechanic that can go haywire. But turns out a free +1/+1 counter is fine. Because you had to do something to get it in there. So
you could cast multiple things cheap to get stuff out if it was in your hand. It was also a good thing to pitch to like Faithless Lootings if you missed on your Vengevines. It was pretty sweet. I actually really liked this little card.
Nice. All right. Nerd Girl, what's your number 10?
So my number 10 is my replacement 10 is a sweet card that I liked in Standard at the time. Ruben and I are both we like to be in the mono red business from time to time, like to turn stuff sideways, and this was pretty relevant for its day, and that was the Ash Zealot. Zealot.
Yeah, Zealot.
It has a first strike and haste for it. Sorry, it is red for a 2/2 first striker with haste. Whenever a player casts a spell from their graveyard, Ash Zealot deals 3 damage to that player. So mono red's not doing anything out of its graveyard, no worries there. And sometimes you just get an extra bolt to the face if you come across the right deck. There was a fair amount of graveyard synergy in the format and in Standard in general at the time, so it was pretty neat. And if it didn't, then it was just a really cool beater. I liked it.
Yeah.
This was, now Innistrad was the previous set, right?
Correct.
So this meant, there was a lot of hate on
Lingering
Souls. Thank you. Yeah. This was the Lingering Souls hate from the red deck of stop flashing that stuff back, Snapcaster hate being a big thing. So this was a card that, there's pendulums, you know what I mean? The format swings one way, and then Theros comes out and it's totally different. But there for a minute, Ash Zealot, again, first strike, haste, 2 mana, 2/2. That in and of itself was pretty exciting back in the day, and it had a bonus ability right on top.
Yeah, I mean, 2 mana, 2/2s without haste are often very powerful in the red deck when they have the right kind of hate keywords. Things like Harsh Mentor come to mind. Stigma Lasher is another one that I used to love playing back in the day. Ash Zealot having haste and first strike is absurd. Anything that anyone else was playing on turn 2, there were no 1/3s, right? There was Augur of Bolas, and that's about it. Everything else was Lotleth Trolls, and I guess Precinct Captain traded with this, but it wasn't like there was a ton that you could really do about it.
There was the mono blue was playing the weird 1/4 guy.
The Frostburn weird.
Frostburn weird, and that was basically the best answer to this. That was, if you weren't playing the mono blue deck, this likely was coming at you. A 2 mana haste bear that does cool stuff is just like a design thing now, and sometimes it's mythic, like it was, in the D&D set or the werewolf set, and sometimes it's not. But most of the time they've been trying to. I mean, Cemetery Gatekeeper and what's the one from Midnight Hunt? Part of the cycle.
You're talking about the Shocky guy?
The Adversary, something or other.
Yeah, Shock Adversary.
Oh, yeah.
That girl.
Yes, I forget that one.
She was very strong. Well, speaking of cycles, let's go ahead and get into my number 10 here, as it is part of a cycle. Now, most of the charms themselves were super cool. Like, a lot of the charms were neat, and they were interesting, and they were nice, but there was one charm to rule them all, and that was Azorius Charm. Azorius Charm was a blue and a white mana for an uncommon instant that says choose one. Creatures you control gain lifelink until end of turn. Draw a card or put target attacking or blocking creature on top of its owner's library. So just good old-fashioned cantrip. I need this guy to deal damage and gain life to keep me alive. Most of the time, put that big scary thing on top of your library. Thanks. This card just was where you wanted it to be, usually when you wanted it in the game.
Yeah, this card was the reason. I hesitate to say that it is the reason why like the Jeskai control deck was so good, but it's one of the reasons why the Jeskai control deck could get to their good stuff. Like, you know, obviously there's a ton of great blue-white things happening, but they needed to do something on turn 2. You needed to interact with the board. If you're going to have Ash Zealots swinging in at you, or Call of the Conclave tokens coming down early, or, you know, God forbid, Pack Rat hits the board against you, you got to do something. So, you know, I think that Azorius Charm was the right card for the right moment.
Yeah, Azorius Charm was pretty useful in Standard. It's still a card that you see in EDH a fair amount. I like this card. Overall, I think the entire Charm cycle is pretty interesting. I like that they really show the flavor of what all the different guilds want to be doing. And all around, I think it's a very, very interesting card cycle.
Yeah, they did a much better job. Just overall, we spoke about it, I think, a little bit in Gatecrash, but just really defining what the guilds were about. Really, like they remake some of the symbols, made it a little bit cleaner and sort of simpler than from the original designs and all that type of stuff. So they did a good job there. All right, let's move on here to number 9. My first hire, and there's going to be plenty of hires tonight, y'all.
Yes.
Nerd Girl, what's your number 9?
My official first hire.
Okay, Ruben, can you bring us through number 9?
I sure can. I don't have a ton of hires on my list, and I knew that this one was not going to be higher on anybody else's list because this card doesn't get a lot of love. It didn't get a lot of love at the time, but what it did get is a Pro Tour trophy in the hands of Mr. Craig Wesco, because he took a pretty aggressive deck. You might know Craig Wesco as a mono-white aficionado. The mono-white deck did, though, have some interesting cards in it, and one of them was Civic Saber.
Okay.
Civic Saber is a 1 generic mana equipment that equips for a generic mana and says the equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each of its colors. That's just going to be good enough. Most of the things in that deck got +2/+0. This was a Bone Splitter for most of the creatures in that deck. And Bone Splitter has been a tournament playable card for much of its adult life. But, you know, you win a Pro Tour, you get on my list, is what I'm saying.
Wizards made a mistake. Well, Wizards makes lots of mistakes. One of the myriad was, and one that they do actually most frequently, is that whenever they do something for the first time, they don't know, how good or bad it is. And when they made equipment, it was way too good. Like way, like sort of X and Y, like should not in any way be that aggressively costed. But it is, and we have a cycle, and that's why they're $1 million and they're awesome. And this is a good example of just saying, like, look, Bone Splitter was really stupidly good, and now you have to work for it because we don't just want to give you that rate. And so here we go.
Yeah, no, I actually, looking at this card, I can see why it's good. I completely skimmed over it when going through the set myself because I don't remember this at all. Like, I don't remember it in Standard. I don't remember it being a thing in Limited because you can't really, like, be playing a ton of multicolored creatures all over the place. But, like, I could definitely see why it would be good in the right constructed deck. Equip cost is real cheap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the kind of card that if you're doing a Magic game show, for example, you would take that little set symbol away and you would show, like, a Return to Ravnica, an Ixalan, something else, that's kind of...
What set is this card from?
What set is this card from? You're like, good luck, because I'm not sure a lot of people would think of Return to Ravnica.
I would have no idea. I don't know if I've ever seen this card. I know I've played a ton of this set, so...
Yeah. It might have passed through your hands and you didn't even remember it.
Nope.
Going here to number 8. Ruben, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is one of those multicolored creatures that often would pick up a Civic Saber. Once again, you win a Pro Tour, you get on my list. This one actually saw a bunch of competitive play over its history, because it is a 1 mana hate bear. It's a 1 mana, hate lion, I would say, because it's a 2/1 and it's Dryad Militant.
Ooh.
Dryad Militant is a Selesnya mana, either a green or a white, lets you cast a 2/1 Dryad Soldier. If an instant or sorcery card would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So it's another big ol' FU to Lingering Souls and a bunch of Snapcaster Mage targets. And it's a 2/1 for 1 mana, which was good enough at the time. And when it picks up a Civic Saver, 4/1 coming in the red zone.
Nice.
Now, if I recall correctly, they had already made the uncommon Savannah Lion, and I think they already went to common Savannah Lion by this point. But this, again, as I recall, it was the first Savannah Lion that wasn't rare, that had an ability on it that was like strong and playable and useful. And
it wasn't a drawback.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it's all upside. And I was like, okay, well, there's my Savannah Lions all grown up and awesome now. And I'll take it. Because it's great card.
I played a ton of this card. I mean, it was just like the best 1-drop in the mono white deck, in a lot of situations.
Well, more hate on Lingering Souls.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like, get the hell out of here, you annoying 3-mana sorcery. Because that's how it go. All right, Nerd Girl, what's your number 8?
My number 8 is higher.
Well, my number 8 is not higher. This one is a fan favorite. This is a card that we spoke about last week in some capacity because it's kind of related to something we were talking about. This is a card that Pithy Needle exists. And when you use Pithy Needle, you must not name the name of this card. You must name the land this card is on. Because Underworld Connections does not have the ability. The land it enchants has the ability.
Interesting.
Yeah, Underworld Connections is 2 black and a generic mana for a rare enchantment aura that enchants a land. An enchanted land has tap, pay 1 life, draw a card. Because let me tell you, so many wonderful times I would be in a tournament setting and they would play a Pithy Needle and I would go, what you naming? And you gotta be cool about it. What you name? And then we go, Underworld Connections. You'd be like, okay, cool. You done? Like, yeah, okay. End of your turn, pay a life, draw a card. And they'd be like, Judge, and I'd be like, come here.
Got him.
Activate my Swamp's activated ability. Yes.
So good.
That's my favorite thing to do at an event. I played Demigod of Revenge in a modern modern GP for that reason, because I just wanted someone to counter. I'm like, okay, so go when we put it on the stack and then just like get in the That was my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, the old know how the stack works trick. Yeah, this card is just absurd and was a big reason why the mono black Devotion deck was super powerful.
Yep.
It's a Phyrexian arena that you can stop paying life for, which is a huge deal. It's a good 3-drop. It's a good 4-drop. It's good on turn 10. This card's just great.
It's incredible why this is worth 20 cents and Phyrexian Arena has been $20+ forever. And they printed it way more often. Okay, I guess. I mean, thematics, is an enchantment that lives on the board, not on the land or something. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe land. Well, it doesn't make sense. There's not that much land hate stuff. So yeah, that does not make a ton of sense to me either. But also the Devotion deck at the time was really key. This has 2 black pips. This almost made my list, but I couldn't really find a home for it in anything that wasn't old standard. So I love this card. It's pretty sweet.
There you go. Let's move on here to number 7. Nerd Girl, do you have a number 7?
I sure do. This one is short and sweet. We talked about it, I think, a few weeks ago. So I thought we would go ahead and add it because I'm pretty sure we mistook a different card for this one, and that is Dreadbore. It is a sorcery speed removal for black and a red, and it says destroy target creature or Planeswalker. And I think we said a different card had destroy Planeswalker for the first time. And then we were corrected saying that Dreadbore was in fact that card. So I thought it would be worth putting it on the list. For 2 mana, killing Planeswalkers is pretty spicy. And this is still the realm of the age where Planeswalkers are insane. Now we're getting a lot more watered down Planeswalkers, which I enjoy. But this effect was so much more powerful back when we needed it.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
Wizards, again, they didn't know what they were doing. And yeah, I appreciate the correction because, I actually looked it up for this episode. This is my number 9. I love Dreadbore, and I love, it was just legit exciting. We had never seen destroy target Planeswalker on a card before, and it was super cool to actually see it. And it was it's fine. It's cool now. It's a $2+ card, and it's obviously it's very useful. But wasn't super excited at the time. A lot of people just didn't choose to run it in any way because it was just too slow.
Yeah.
But it's
sorcery speed removal is tough to convince you, but in a format full of Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, you kind of needed this. Very exciting. And you're right. When we brought up, I think it was me, when I brought up Hero's Downfall, I was incorrect that Hero's Downfall was the first, and this was in fact the OG.
I mean, Theros did come after the Ravnica block stuff they did at the time. But yeah, and Dreadbore also has that incredible Rakdos symbol just cut out of the guy's chest, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And Ruben, what's your number 7?
My number 7, we talked about this card a little bit already. We referenced it. It's very weird. It's Frostburn Weird. That's the joke. We did it. We did the thing. Frostburn Weird is 2 Izzet mana, red, blue. Pick and choose which one you want to cast for a 1/4 Weird. And if you pay an Izzet mana, it gets +1/-1 until the end of the turn. This, of course, was a major piece of the mono blue devotion deck that won the Pro Tour. We'd never seen a 2 mana 1/4. I don't think
so.
Particularly in
an
aggressive
or something.
Deck. And also the 2 pips were hugely important. And, in a pinch, it could get in for some damage later in a game.
This is a good example of a very specific card, a very specific type of card. It needs to, it filled the exact role that it needed to. This draft chaff a lot of the time just was perfect. It needed both the pips. It needed the high toughness because the format was aggressive. It needed that ability so you could get it aggressive if you want to do back. And you could kill other Frostburn weirds and all this other stuff. This card was just so weird, but just did it was so weird, but it did exactly what it needed to do.
Right.
It's definitely a really situational creature, right? You're right. It is awkward enough to where you can't play it a ton. It's not going to be in a lot of decks. It's not going to see a ton of play, but the decks that want it really do. It kind of covers a lot of bases.
It just turned out to be the perfect 2-drop for that deck, and I just never. That was one of those they played it on turn 2 under the cameras or whatever, and I'm like, Frostburn Weird? Yeah. What?
There's a bunch of there's been several cards from throughout Magic's history that I look back on them and I go, that card is actively terrible, but it's exactly what that deck needed. And Frostburn Weird is squarely in that column.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So for my number, we on 7, right? For my number 7 here, this is a card that just has tons of love. This is a card that is expensive, one of the most expensive cards in the set. They've included it in Secret Lairs already. They've included it as Kaladesh Inventions. This is one of those cards that, when you're in a multi-color deck, it's one of the best mana fixer rock things of all time, and that's Chromatic Lantern. Chromatic Lantern is 3 generic mana for a rare artifact that says lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and it self-taps for 1 mana of any color. It's the ultimate fixer of fixers.
My number 8. So
Nice.
It looks like my Dreadbore and Lantern, we just flopped them around is what happened. This is also, importantly, a huge thing that we're still seeing a ton of in EDH. And we're seeing, some play in Eternal formats. So I can't imagine that this is a cheap card at this point. It's been reprinted once or twice, and it's always lovely to have. And again, I'm seeing it a ton on casual tables.
Absolutely.
Now, if you were looking for a budget version, this is very similar to a card called Coalition Relic, which came out from Future Sight, which has charge counters and put in charge counters and all this other silly stuff, where this one's just look, your lands are awesome. And this card's great at the end.
This is the 3 mana rock.
Yes.
I would think. So the thing about Coalition Relic is it ramps you from 3 to 6 with the charge counter. This just fixes your mana for the rest of the game. You can play all basic planes and then play Cruel Ultimatum with this card. So your mana is no issue anymore once you have a Chromatic Lantern in play. There's nothing like it. I can't imagine they would ever print anything that approaches this level of, all right, this fixes all of the things.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 2-mana artifact that gives all your lands that ability but doesn't tap itself.
Right.
Like maybe, but like, when Atraxa is one of the most popular commanders in the world, Chromatic Lantern is going to be one of the most expensive cards in the deck. All right, let's move here to number 6. Ruben, what's number 6?
Number 6 is the last. I swear this is the last of the weird, aggressive mono white cards on my list, because we had a really good minute there with Craig Wesco.
We did.
And you know what's better than winning 1 Pro Tour? Winning 2 Pro Tours, ladies and gentlemen, because this card was also in the mono blue devotion deck. It was the best 1-drop in the mono blue devotion deck. It was one of the best cards in both the mono blue and the white aggro deck. We've already had a comment about it in the chat that you want, after when you play a turn 2 Frostburn Weird into a Night Veil Spectre, you want to have a turn 1 Judge's Familiar. Judge's Familiar is an Azorius mana, either a white or a blue, for a 1/1 bird with flying. Sacrifice Judge's Familiar, counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1. This thing picks up a Saber, that's a 3/1 flying in the air. This thing doesn't pick up a Saber, guess what? You're still not casting your removal spell on time. You're still not, drawing with your divination. You're still having to, wait till turn 3 to cast your Doomblade. This thing just screws everything up. It's a curse catcher with evasion, and it goes in multiple decks. I mean, it's a very, very, very good card.
It's remarkable how powerful this 1-drop was, in my opinion. Like, from Judge's Familiar into Judge's Familiar just past the turn would often just mess decks up from the rest of the game so much that they couldn't really play around it. And at the same time, you had this evasive creature just pop, pop, pop.
So real quick, I just want to read you. So I have one of my mods. We kick around my top 10 list a little bit, beforehand, before I submit. Although I bet Judge's Familiar is on Ruben's list, he seems to love to talk about cards like that.
Okay, listen.
So
I resemble that
we've only been
remark.
here for like 3 months, and my entire community knows what you're about.
Listen,
Wow. Got the read,
This was a
bro.
conversation that we had.
I didn't need to be called out like this, but you're right.
He's in this picture and he doesn't
also,
like it.
I've been read. I understand.
Well, I mean, it's one of those perfect, like, again, it sort of fills a niche. You have an absolutely gorgeous Friday Night Magic version that's less than $2 because it just doesn't see any play. It's not going to see a lot of Commander play. This is a card that exists for a constructed format, and it was fantastic in it.
Those little aggressive flyers, they'll sneak in and get you.
Absolutely.
I will also add that I believe that the Judge's Familiar is the reason why the Judge Academy switched to the owl motif for their promos.
Nice.
So
Less
lives
balance.
on even more.
Now it's the owl. I'll take it. Nerd Girl, what's your number 6?
So I do have a number 6. So
All
this is
right.
a card that we saw a ton of in Standard at the time. It's still, board clears are, we want as many as we can in our EDH decks, so it's still kind of popping up from time to time. And it was a great thing when we were seeing a ton of those like aggressive decks with Ash, Ash Zealot, and that is Supreme Verdict for colorless white, and a blue. We have a sorcery. It cannot be countered, and it destroys all creatures. So again, we're seeing some of it in more casual gameplay in EDH today, and then also it is at the time, a great way for only 4 mana to stop all of those aggressive creature decks.
Oh, I mean, this thing still sees some play in Legacy, doesn't it? I mean, I've seen it pop up here and there because you ain't gonna stop it, and sometimes you just need a Wrath that's gonna Wrath every time.
Well, it sees play in Legacy for 2 reasons. 1, it can't be countered, and there's a million counter spells in Legacy. And 2, it has blue in its cost, so you yourself can remove it to a Force of Will. This was very popular in Miracles when Miracles in top counterbalance Miracles before the ban happened, for that exact reason. The can't be countered clause on this and another card that I don't know if we'll talk about. I'll say it. And Abrupt Decay.
Sure.
We're like, we've never seen that on something so cheap. Like we also hadn't had a 4-mana Wrath in a while.
No,
they just didn't give us 4-mana Wraths. And then they were like, not only is this a 4-mana Wrath, we're also making it so that it can't be countered.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it was great at the time, and I didn't know it was still seeing play in Legacy, so that's awesome to hear.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a fantastic card, and like just the ability to Like, and this is, to me, this is a sort of, I give props to R&D because they knew what this card needed. It didn't need to be cute, didn't need to scry or whatever. It didn't need to draw cards because you're already good at that in the blue-white deck. It needed to not be countered, and that's awesome. Can't do anything weird with Judge's Familiar to stop this card. It's just going to happen. So that's awesome. So for my number 6 here, this is a card that would go in that blue-white control deck. This is one of my favorite blue and white cards ever. This is just one of the best removal spells. This is another way to hate on Lingering Souls. Jesus Christ. Detention Sphere. So get out of here. For a blue, a white, and a generic mana, it was a rare enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent not named Detention Sphere and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. And when Detention Sphere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled cards to the battlefield under their owner's control. And of course, it has that very special clause, so you can't Detention Sphere the Detention Sphere and lock the game if they're the only 2 permanents on the board. 2 non-land permanents. So.
Yeah, card's great. Once again, Return to Ravnica was the FU Lingering Souls the set. Like, it was wild how every single card tried to deal with Lingering Souls, and Lingering Souls was still quite good.
Oh yeah,
but
all the way through.
We had dozens of cards from this set, Gate Crash and Dragon's Maze, that hated specifically on making 2/1/1 flyers, which is hilarious. Detention Sphere, very useful. I mean, it was still 3 mana. We still got a 3 mana Oblivion Ring effect that was just a better Oblivion Ring.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't rare, so it wasn't super useful for limited, right? Like, we want our O-rings at uncommon. But, I mean, it was seeing a ton of play in Constructed. This blue-white control deck was very, very good. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of cards that were in it because they were kind of just home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, Wizards was like, can we make certain things very powerful? And they did. And then they saw kind of what happened as a result. All right, let's move on here to number 5. My number 5 and number 4 are higher. So I'll see you guys later. Ruben, what's number 5?
Speaking of blue-white control, it's time to talk about the thing.
No.
I am actually shocked that I don't have this higher. How is my number 5 the highest anyone put Sphinx's Revelation?
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot, right?
Wild to me.
It's my 9. The reason it took a huge hit is because I don't think it maintained any status after the fact, which is kind of important to me.
Yeah, not even
the cards that were good but are no longer good are usually very low on my list, and then it's like, holy crap, this is always good and it's now banned, is at the top of my list.
That's true. That's a fair point. So Sphinx's Revelation, for y'all little kids that don't remember, X white blue blue instant, you gain X life and draw X cards. Basically, Return to Ravnica was, let's take these all-stars from all time, change it to Azorius mana.
Fix them.
Don't raise the cost, just change it to Azorius mana and give them better things.
Yeah.
Sphinx's Revelation, Detention Sphere. Sphinx's Revelation is Stroke of Genius. It's still an instant. It just, instead of being 2 colorless of blue and X, is white, blue, blue, and X. Which is not that hard to do, especially given our check land, shock land mana base that we had at the time.
Yeah.
And that gaining life was hugely relevant in the format, because you would, the Ash Zealot deck would, or the Call of the Conclave deck would put you down to 5, and you'd be like, well, if I had a Sphinx's Revelation here, I'd probably just die next turn.
Or mono black.
Or mono black. If I had a Stroke of Genius here, I would just die next turn. But I'm gaining 6 life and drawing 6 cards, right? Which would draw you another Sphinx's Revelation that would gain you 7 life and draw 7 cards. And also get you more Azorius Charms and Supreme Verdicts and Detention Spheres and whatever, what have you. So the catch-up mechanic of this card was so good, we never saw this card's like again.
Yeah, because if you go Supreme Verdict into Sphinx's Revelation, you have now recovered from everything an aggressive deck was doing to you. Like, a lot of times you're like, okay, well, I've stabilized, but if they top a Zealot or they top a burn spell, I'm out. And then this is where that's going to come in. I think it actually filled a very similar thing, which we saw with the flying jellyfish.
Hydroid Crisis.
Yeah, Hydroid Crisis. Yeah, it was a very similar feel. I mean, you didn't get the body, but like it was kind of the same idea, where it was like you get this nice recovery, and it makes for a whole archetype all on its own.
Yeah, and we saw sort of how they kind of moved it into the different colors and Ravnica Part 3. And so, we have here, like, Sphinx's Rev was just so, like, It's so hard to explain that when they would go EOT rev for 2, untap, rev for 3, they've drawn 5 cards, they've gained 5 life over the period of 2 turns. And if Supreme Verdict came before that, it is like so ridiculously hard to get back in the game. But it's also one of those things where you can think you're still in the game. You know what I mean? The mono red player would be like, oh, I'm swinging for 7. You know, like I dealt 2 damage to them. But they got 5 cards now. And when they untap, you're going to lose. It's just going to happen. With Supreme Verdict crap, they're going to have a counter spell for your next thing and a detention sphere for anything after that. And then they're going to find another rev and blah, 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 and you're going to die. And that's just, this is the type of card that, like, it's cute. It's nice that it kind of proves what happens when you make this type of effect, and all the other blue-white cards really good. But I'm not like it. I don't really miss it that much. Nerd Girl, what's number 5?
So I do have a number 5. It is a lot of text. This card was relevant at the time. More blue on the table for us, but also has some pretty interesting effects for EDH today. So it's, still seeing a fair amount of play. And that is Jace, the Architect of Thought. For 2 colorless and a blue, you're getting a Planeswalker with 4 starting loyalty, which is reasonably high. The +1 says until at the end of your next turn, whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks, gets -1, -0. Amazing on an EDH table because nobody's attacking you. For its -2, reveal the top 3 cards of your library. An opponent shuffles or separates them into 2 piles. Put one of them into your hand and the other onto the bottom. So again, good one-on-one gameplay. Also very good in EDH because you can give it to the opponent that wants to help you kill the other person, right? Give you all your best stuff. And then the -8, which again doesn't take too long to get to when you start off with 4, is for each player, search that player's library for a non-land card, exile it, then they shuffle their library. You may cast them without paying their mana cost. So you're going to get 3 cards off the top of your EDH table, which is kind of bonkers.
Yeah, you get to search their library for anything at that point. Like this card was, and also it's hilarious. This card is 50 cents, lol. When this thing just like ran standard for a long time. It was in the mono blue decks. It was in the control decks. Factor Fiction had returned. We can now Factor Fiction for -2. That was so cool. And like it was neat and it was cool. And when he left, he was no Mind Sculptor,
Sure.
Go.
Card's great though. I mean, it has seen some amount of older format play. Obviously, not a huge player in those older formats because you do have the Mind Sculptor at the exact same mana cost. But in standard, this thing was absolute powerhouse. We, +1 to survive, and then minus to get the Factor Fiction effect while you have your mana up was the most common play pattern that we'd seen. And the fact that this did let you do that effect of separating piles for the first time in a very long time was very exciting and very Jace. And it was nice to have a Jace in a top tier deck once again.
I mean, the play pattern was, turn forward, you +1, and, say go, and they would try to kill the Jace. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, most of the time they won't. And then you would untap, and you would use this -2 to find the Sphinx's rev. Then you would rev for, like I said, rev for 2, that's 5 mana. Then you would untap, and you rev for 3, and you would kill Jace in the middle of that. And you'd be like, oh, I killed Jace. And it's like, they're up 5 cards in the middle of it. It doesn't matter.
Also, I would just take the pile that had 2 lands in it every time. Like... I would reveal 2 lands and a spell, and they'd separate the 2 lands and the spell because that's what you have to do. And I'd be like, all right, fine. I drew 2 cards.
Draw 2 cards.
Like, we did it.
There was a school of thought for a very, very, very long time that just would not put together the idea that if something gave you lands in your hand or went and searched for lands to put in your hand, it was drawing you a card. It was just discounted. It was like land tax isn't drawing you 3 cards. And finally someone like smacked them and said, it's drawing 3 cards. Just because it's lands doesn't mean it's not cards. It's cards.
Yeah. And these controlling decks with Sphinx's Revelation really wants as many lands as it can get. Plus, and that doesn't include any discard synergies or anything like that, or your opponent might make you discard. Sometimes they have those sorts of abilities. So yeah, it's definitely card draw. They're going to be helpful. Look at blue-white control today. We literally want 50,000 lands in play because we want to be activating our 7 land things. So anytime we get these sort of abilities, they're always very helpful.
Absolutely. Let's move here to number 4. Ruben, what's number 4?
So we talked about Sphinx's Revelation, but we didn't talk about Sphinx's Revelation's evil twin, which actually I think has had a longer and better pedigree than Sphinx's Revelation. We talked about how Sphinx's Revelation didn't really cut the mustard in older formats. This card has. This card has seen play in older formats and, more importantly, has a much better track record of being an awesome top deck in the finals of Worlds. My number 4 is Rakdos' Return. Rakdos' Return is X black red for a sorcery, and it says it deals X damage to target opponent or planeswalker. That player or that planeswalker's controller discards X cards. Famously, this was the top deck of the year. Not the Bonfire of the Damned top deck, which of course is now famous in GIF form, but the following year in the finals of Worlds, a hellbent top deck Rakdos' Return ended the tournament.
I mean, we go from 50-cent mythic to a $1 mythic, so we're twice as good, everybody. Twice as much value. I mean, this is a card that, Mind Shatter and whatnot just ended up being a nothing burger. And if you just swap the costs around a little bit, it reads really cool. It's just not the most powerful thing you could probably be doing at that mana cost, and that's okay. It's unbelievable how powerful this is at 1 mana X and how not powerful this is at 2 mana X.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah. And also, obviously, Sam Black wrote an article that was about Elvish Visionary will always be better than Elder Fang Disciple, and why that is, and the theory of why that is. And so Sphinx's Revelation is a better card than Rakdos' Return, but Rakdos' Return has a better long-term pedigree and certainly a better single tournament moment.
That's definitely probably true. And another thing, when we come back and do these sorts of retro things, not all the cards are going to be home runs current day, right? A lot of them are going to drop off. I know I had a playset of Sphinx's Revelations, and when they rotated out, and I was very sad about it. But these are amazing cards. Going
through my top 10 of Return to Ravnica, there's a lot of nothing burgers in Return to Ravnica when you look at them now.
These days.
Yeah.
Nerdgirl, what's number 4?
My number 4 is higher.
Well, so is mine. So let's move on here to number 3. All right, so I can talk about my number 3 because it's fun. And I can also talk about my number 3 because we've already talked about it already a little bit, dropped a little tiny hint. That's okay. It's Abrupt Decay, because Abrupt Decay is incredible. Abrupt Decay is a card that just blew the minds of almost every Magic player playing at the time. Counterbalance was a ridiculous force. Counterbalance ruined Extended. Counterbalance was wrecking Legacy. Counterbalance was everywhere. And we'll get to other problems that are related to that, whatever, in the black-green variety. But for now, Abrupt Decay was your thing's gonna die. And your thing for 2 mana or 3 mana or less, which is the whole format, is going to die. Abrupt Decay is a black and a green mana for a rare instant that says it cannot be countered by spells or abilities, which is also really sweet. Hexproof, nothing, and it's happening. And you destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. So this thing was sweet, ubiquitous, like a $5 card all day, no matter how many times they reprint it, and it's awesome.
So, clarification.
Yeah.
Hexproof does work against it.
Can't target it. Ward would not counter it. But
Ward
hexproof.
Oh, you're
Hexproof.
Right. Okay.
So if I cast Vines to Vastwood on my creature, that is neither a spell nor an ability. That's a state-based effect.
You are correct. I'm sorry. You're
However,
right. Ward is though.
Yes. Ward says counter.
Yes.
And isn't countered on resolution, for example.
Yeah, so similar to the red burn spell we had in Strixhaven, I think, where we could burn down the ward character without paying it.
Yes.
Yeah, so that it works like that, so it'll be fine, but
debate,
not the actual targeting bits.
Yeah.
But you're right, Abrupt Decay. I mean, when this card came out, we were like, this is the legaciest legacy card that's ever legacy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's fine in standard, probably, it takes out detention spheres and it'll take out your 2/2s for 2, but this destroys every permanent in legacy, or did at the time. There were no 4-drops. In fact, people started playing 4-drops because Abrupt Decay existed.
It's true.
So yeah, this thing was hugely relevant and still is to this day.
I'm actually just looking up how much it is now. It's still moderately low for what I thought. It has seen several printings, and It's also seen like a promo version.
The Seb
that
McKinnon
makes
promo
sense.
is nice.
But like this is a card that like I used to margin trade at GPs and things like this, and this is a card that I know a lot of people spec on for like very long-term growth. I know people who picked up 100 of these, 200 of these, and I'm sure they're still sitting in their closets because they think that this card was going to just become the thing in Eternal formats. And I think the amount of printings it's had has stopped that from being the case, but that doesn't mean it isn't as powerful as we thought. It is still $4, $5 with a ton of printings.
Yeah, it's a terrific card, and it's just one of those where like black green's not always going to be the best color combination. It is a very sort of restrictive, like it's not hybrid. You know what I mean? Like it's black and green, so you need both of those colors or it's not happening. And you also need a format that has enough permanence that they kind of care about that. Like if it's a little more spell based, this isn't really going to do much when you're playing a bunch of combo decks all day.
This was my 4, so it looks like I'm just behind you on every card. It's gonna seem like. So yeah, we're very, very close on this card.
Nice. Nerd Girl, what's your number 3?
Higher,
she says. Ruben, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is the one higher I have on somebody else's
aren't I
list.
glad I jumped in there for number 3? I was just
Perfect.
I was just doing that. All right, cool. Ruben, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is a card that, when we say ubiquitous, this card was the format. This card was the best card in the best deck for a year and a half. And it didn't start out that way. When it was first printed, this card was not the end-all be-all. You could pick up a bunch of copies for relatively cheap, and I know some people who spec'd into it. And there's also a spectacular new Secret Lair version of this card by an artist named Fiona Sie, who has only done 3 pieces of art for Magic. The promotional Sethron Herloon General from the Year of the Ox promotion and the associated token. And then the Year of the Rat promo for Pack Rat. Pack Rat is a generic and a black for a star rat, whose power and toughness are each equal to the number of rats you control. Pay 2 generic and a black and discard a card, create a token that's a copy of Pack Rat. Basically, this was it was just a Lord in a can. You would play this on turn 2 as a 1/1. You'd discard a card on turn 3 and make both of them 2/2s. Then you do it again the next turn and have 3 3/3s, 4 4/4s. That game would just be over in many cases.
I mean, Pack Rat mono lands was a deck.
Yeah.
It's absurd. This card is so good that I, in my head, did not read it correct because there's no way it could say what it says. I did not play this in my pre-release, and I opened it and was playing black. It got cut. And then I proceeded to go to a PTQ and after I now know what it does, open a double Pack Rat pool and have to pass it. Like this card,
no,
it was so good.
Oh my
There's
God.
Literally no way it should say the things it does.
Well, Pack Rat needed 2 things to happen. One, it needed Innistrad to go away. Lingering Souls just needed to go. But now that Lingering Souls was gone, it needed Thoughtseize, because this thing could just be like, you'll play Pack Rat, go. And all right, kill it. And they'd be like, oh, well, I look dumb now for playing this dumb 1/1. No, you got rid of their removal with the Thoughtseize, then you played the Pack Rat, and if they didn't draw the removal, the game could just end exactly like Ruben explained it. It's over. Nothing you can do. And they wouldn't do anything else. You wouldn't have to. You just make a Pack Rat, swing, go. Make a Pack Rat, swing, go. Like, do you have anything? Are you dead now? Like, that's pretty much it.
And we're seeing the exact same ability in limited play because it's not as cheap as Pack Rat, so it's not making it into Constructed, I don't think. But there's a demon in this set currently in Crimson Vow that has the same mechanic where you make a copy, including itself, getting to then sack more stuff, which is nuts.
Yeah, that card, I'm glad they made it like 7 mana or whatever.
Right.
Versus 2 mana with 3 to activate. Ugh.
Yeah, because if it's a copy, so you have a window. You have a 1 window to kill this card. If you do not, and then you have targeted removal, the copies can still make more copies. So you have a turn to figure out how to deal with this card. Otherwise, you're just dead.
And you had the best of both worlds, because you would Thoughtseize and you would see 2 shocks or whatever. You'd be like, okay, cool, I'm just not playing my background on turn 2. Right. Say go. Like you would know not to play it. Like it was so sick. Thoughtseize
just wait till turn 5.
Blew this card into the stratosphere.
Oh yeah,
it was absolutely ridiculous. Nerd Girl, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is my last hire.
Oh, it's the last hire. How did I know? Well, my Pack Rat was my number 5 because it's still a terrific card. But for my number 2, which I'm guessing is both on y'all's list, maybe possibly, we'll see. This card is as high as it is on my list. This card is this card is like, you know, whatever the mirror image of Leyline of the Void is, is what Rest in Peace is. Rest in Peace is just, it's your number 3. That's fantastic. I mean, look,
Not on my list.
It's fine because he's a hipster like that. Look, Rest in Peace is an absolute like megaton bomb graveyard hate. This is you're not getting it for free like Leyline of the Void, but it's just absolutely huge. This is the gold standard for graveyard hate in that form. Rest in Peace is a white and generic mana for a rare enchantment that says when it enters the battlefield, you exile all cards from all graveyards, and if a card or token will be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Lingering Souls Hate number 222 or whatever, and just one of the best damn Magic cards ever made. It's over $5 or $6 no matter what kind you're looking at, because it's Rest in Peace. It answers everything.
Yeah, it actually just came out again in another Secret Lair drop in the dog theme one. This is a staple in every Eternal format. It's going to be the answer for so many decks. It's similar to like Cage or anything else that we see. I mean, it's never going to be the headliner of any deck, but it's going to be in every single white sideboard from now until forever.
And that was a heck of a single Secret Lair to pick up. That thing's $25 for the doggy Rest in Peace.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And this was also in Gideon's spellbook as well. So they've tried reprinting it a bunch of times because it's a 4 of in all those sideboards. I think it was my number 2 white card on Arena. It's up there with cards like Hydroblast for the best sideboard cards of all time. It's and Pyroblast and the rest of those. It is absolutely spectacular. This card is perfectly named. The illustration, the Rebecca Gay illustration, is gorgeous. Or is it Therese? I forget who it is. The first one, yeah. It's Therese on the first one. But and then the iconic now Gideon art with the statue is
Jason
also
Rainville.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, Jason Rainville crushed on that one. And to have a card that just fills such an important void, it's the right cost, it's the right name, it's got terrific image. It's just
Does everything right.
Yeah, this is one of those like excellent Magic cards that just it does what you think it kind of does. It works how you think it works, and that's fantastic. Let's move on here to number 1. Ruben, what's your number 1?
Number 1 is by far the most expensive card today from Return to Ravnica. It is by far the most popular card from this set in Commander. It might be the most popular card in Commander that isn't Soul Ring. You're number 2, you're number 4. I think it's no one is surprised that Cyclonic Rift is at the top of my list.
Yeah, this card's done.
Cyclonic Rift is a colorless into blue. No, it isn't. For an instant, return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. It has overload of 6 generic into blue. You may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each, which means return each non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand. That is a one-sided, pretty much unconditional board sweep of every permanent type. This card ends more games in Commander than any card, period.
Yeah. And I'm so sad because I know I drafted 1,000 of these stupid things, and I'm sure I sold them to a store for like $1 at the time because it was like not really much of a thing. Commander wasn't big yet. Yeah. And it was just like borderline bulk rare. Like it's like a 1 of in some control deck. It was fine. I'm sure I pieced them out for 50 cents as a bulk to a vendor, and they could all be worth like $30 right now.
I mean, all right, so let's get really sick. What's the foil price from Return to Ravnica? Is $40 on that one, which is great.
I think they're like 25 to 30 non-foil as is anyway. Which is just
you see them actually very close to their price. Like the Double Masters full art and the full art foil are like $2 apart because most casual players don't really care that much about foils anyway. But they do care about really cool versions of a really powerful spell. And this is just This is one of those cards that, like, I just think it snuck up on literally everyone, including Wizards, and they're like, oh god, what did we do again?
Basically.
Overload is like the best. Like, this is what, like, Cleave should have just gotten it out of here and just put Overload in there. Let's make some more Overload cards, because at least that reads better. It makes more sense.
People still play Vandal Blast these days. I assume that's not anybody's number one, so I'm just gonna say it. You know, Electrickery is still sees some amount of play. Overload was actually a very good ability.
So one of the things we talked about when Cleave came out is we thought that it would translate very poorly in other languages. And that was something that I thought would very much be the case. However, I've had several people who play in other language actually say that it's much cleaner than the English version. For some reason, it actually translates much better. And Overload, as you were reading it, did kind of seem like a mouthful. So now I'm a little bit more on the fence than I was before.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, again, this is the type of effect. I mean, it's literally everybody but you. It's at the end of the last player's turn. It's 7 mana, which isn't that hard to make. I mean, for this,
the fact
just
that
like,
it's an instant is super rude.
So I forgot about this card, and I've only played like 6 games of Commander, and we were at this big table. It was very intense. I had lots of tokens, and someone cast that, and I was like, "Wait, you do what now?" I was like, what does this do? I don't remember."
It's absurd.
And you scoop it all up, and then you put it in the deck. You shuffle the deck for the next game, because the game is over, because you had to pick up all your stuff. So that's Cyclonic Rift, your friendly neighborhood $30 Return to Ravnica rare. Yep. All right, so by process of elimination, this would be Ruben's number 3. This would be our number 1, Nerd Girl and Eyes. This is a card that bought me lunch, famously. This was a card that I love dearly. This is a card that is the closest thing we have to a 1-mana Planeswalker. Nerd Girl, what's our number 1?
So our number 1 is Deathrite Shaman. Deathrite Shaman is 1 mana hybrid, black or green, elf shaman. It has power and toughness of 1/2. You can tap it, exile target land card from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color to your pool. For 1 black, you can exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard. Each opponent loses 2 life. For 1 green, you can tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard. You gain 2 life. This does so much stuff. In addition to ruining any sort of graveyard synergy that your opponent might have, it's banned in a ton of formats. And every single time I drafted it, it paid for the draft and then some. And I loved it to death, which is why it's my number 1. I had it in several decks, and it's a great, cool, fun card.
What could we say that hasn't been said? Okay, here we go. What would I change if I could make an alchemy version of Deathrite Shaman? Change the first ability to exit a land card from your graveyard. Sure. That, to me, that little, like, once you put that in a format with fetch lands, it's broken. Like, it's just not even close. At least sometimes you won't have the fetch land, but one of the two of you always has the fetch land, which is what makes him so busted.
Right. I think that another easy alchemy change is give it 1 toughness. Why does this have 2 toughness? Wild.
For
Wild
1 mana,
trickery
3 abilities. 2 toughness.
It's very rude. Very rude for
and
this
a relevant
card.
creature type.
Right.
And an elf.
Hybrid mana.
Type. 2 relevant creature types if we get Harmonic Prodigy in play. So Deathrite Shaman, I think that, the alchemy would be only stuff from your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard. Like pick one or
pick
the
one.
other.
Yeah, if it's the other graveyard, I'm fine. But you can't have both, because both.
Yeah, if you want it to be hate still, only target your opponent's graveyard. I think that would fix it. But as it is, any graveyard, I have a fetch land. Well, also in Legacy, I can go Flooded Strand, Underground Sea, Deathrite Shaman. So I have a mana dork in my black-blue deck. Like, this is not good.
It makes mana cost not really mana cost, which was weird. Like, I feel like what happened, and this, I don't know, I'm just, from literally all the tales I heard of Wizards, here's an example of what could have happened, which is the last 2 abilities are the last 2 abilities, and the first one said something like only your graveyard or only their graveyard, and somebody was like, it'd be a lot cleaner if they all just said a graveyard, and then they changed it, and here we are.
Yeah, we should also make this only black or green mana instead of any color.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are about this card that are just a little bit too much.
This card banned in Legacy and banned in Modern, and it's still $7 because...
Yeah, it does everything, is the thing. So, like, it doesn't matter what your deck is doing. It messes with all of the other decks enough to just make it worth playing. Mm-hmm. And it also Okay, your opponent's not playing something from their graveyard. Cool, I'll just gain life and ramp out and be happy.
Right.
Oh, you have Dredgevine? Okay, well, now you don't.
Yeah.
Game over.
And it's
just-
main deck hate also.
Yeah.
It was oppressive as a word. Like, it was... You either played Deathrite Shaman, which most did, and or you had a plan to kill it on turn 1, or you did both. You know,
Yeah.
keep yours, kill theirs. That's what you need.
Ideally both, yeah.
Ideally
Ideally
both.
both. And that was our top 10 Return to Ravnica cards. You'll see them on screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Nerd Girl's list, Ruben's top 10, and we want to hear from you about what card we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win $50 worth of anything at CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nerd Girl.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Ruben.
Hey, this was a fun return down memory lane.
I saw what you did there as we move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsors, CardHoarder.com and UltraSleeves.com, my co-host, Nerd Girl, and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching and listening. I hope you support us at Patreon.com/MagicMikes. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at Twitch.tv at Magic Mikes, on Twitter at Magic Mikes Cast, our Magic Mikes subreddit, and like the Magic Mikes page on Facebook. Or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mikes. Good night, everybody.